Analysis. We are not just the talk station of the nation. We are your number one talk station. Join the league of fans consuming great news at www.nigeriainfo.fm and get rewarded for your time. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Above and beyond borders. It's Borderline
with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf.
Welcome back to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. Yes, you heard my first guest. I told you today, or did I not say? We have an all-Jewish Israeli guest list. It's an absolute honor. My next guest, well, how can I describe him? I don't know how I'm going to describe him, but because we don't have much time, I'm just going to tell you that he's a political scientist and historian of international relations. He works with bridges ideologies and realpolitik. His research traces out the legacy of Zionism, and the forces of empire continue to shape Israeli statecraft and regional geopolitics. His name is Shaiel Ben-Ephraim. Did I pronounce it correctly?
You did. I'm amazed. No one ever pronounces my name right.
Well,
I'm so impressed.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shaiel. Well, my name is Ireti. I don't expect you to actually learn it right now. But it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to Borderlines, albeit digitally.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.
Before we go ahead, it's been an incredible afternoon when we booked for your very precious time. We didn't know this was going to happen. We didn't know Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was going to be giving a speech 2 hours ago now or so. I'd like you to break that down for us. What are your thoughts? What did you make of what he said? Even the, if I may say so, the theatrics, the one on the lapel, the pictures and everything, and the whole scene when that sort of 50-minute speech that he made. Break it down for us.
Well, I feel like Netanyahu was a very good spokesperson for the 90s and the 2000s, and knew how to navigate the media landscape at that time. But now it all feels very antiquated, doesn't it? It looks like a very old dog and pony show that we've seen before, with props and cards and all these sorts of things and catchphrases. And I think that the world has really moved on from that and has left Netanyahu behind. And I think that rather than the actual content of the speech, what the world is going to remember from this, and most speeches in the UN are not remembered, and this one will be remembered, are two pictures. One picture is of the people walking out of the hall. The vast majority of the representatives in the UN General Assembly walked out of the hall, including many of the more Western countries, and that's new. The other picture that will be remembered, and this might be remembered more in Israel, are the pictures of the loudspeakers that he placed in Gaza to empty buildings, to have them listen to his speech. I mean, no one else wanted to listen, so the empty buildings in Gaza were destroyed buildings in Gaza were made to listen. As for the speech itself, there was nothing new in it. It's all things that we've heard before. Israel is the victim of terrorism, he says. The whole world has to stand up to the same terrorism that Israel stands up to, he says. And Israel needs to finish the job in Gaza, he says. Totally ignoring the developments moving towards a ceasefire now. It was basically almost confrontational to Donald Trump, who just yesterday said that there has to be movement towards a ceasefire. So there was no conciliatory tone there at all towards Netanyahu, towards Trump and his demands for a ceasefire. So it became pretty clear, not that I had any doubts, but pretty clear that he's going to continue full steam ahead in Gaza, even if Trump is willing to take some risks in order to stop him. He's daring Trump to to actually stop him. So those are the headlines, and I feel like on a substantive level and on an oral level, the speech fell flat because Netanyahu is really not changing his game. But the world's not receptive to his message anyway, so at some level, it doesn't matter.
Oh dear, he's not going to like you very much, is he now, Ben?
He's not a fan.
So you mentioned something, and I find that quite interesting when you say, it's almost like he's discarding what Donald Trump has said. What do you think is going on between them? Because some have said, again, I asked my previous guest this earlier, it seems like Donald Trump is fed up. He's like, look, I'm done. Just stop this war. Otherwise, you're going to stop me from winning my my shining Nobel Peace Prize. Or, is there something a lot more going on? I mean, is this AIPAC? What is it? Break it down for us. How does Netanyahu was able to stand up to Trump and pretty much embarrass him on that stage?
Well, I think one of the problems with the way we analyze Trump, all of us, is we're intelligent people, we're foreign policy analysts, we try to look for policy and logic, and Trump is not a logical, policy-oriented person. Trump on domestic policy is fairly consistent. Tariffs, immigration, so on and so forth. On foreign policy, he changes his tune every single day. If you look at Ukraine, that's the most glaring example. One day he's very pro-Zelensky. One day he's pro-Putin. One day he's somewhere in between. And there's a lot of that with Israel. It seems that Netanyahu, and he listens to whoever he talked to last, and that sticks with him for a while. So what happened the other day when Trump was saying there needs to be a ceasefire is he just talked to all the Arab leaders. And the Arab leaders made a compelling case, I guess, and he was influenced by them. But now Netanyahu is going to make his case, and Netanyahu's supporters in his administration will make their case, and he will say something different in a couple of days. That's at least what Netanyahu is banking on. It doesn't look to me like the Arab leaders have been able to put sustained pressure on Trump, even though they have a lot of influence on him, which, by the way, raises the suspicion that they're not trying all that hard. The Arab leaders. I don't know what amount of pressure is coming there. The fact that he talked to them and then changed his tune, it shows me that Israel is probably managing day to day to get their voice in his ear more. And we know who's vocalizing the Israeli case in Trump's ear every day. Marco Rubio being the chief one. He's the national security advisor and Secretary of State, which makes him, at least technically, the most powerful person in American foreign policy since Henry Kissinger. And he touts the Netanyahu line over and over again. So I think he's hearing Marco Rubio. He's hearing people like that. I don't think Vance and Hegseth, who are more cold towards Israel, are as consistently putting their philosophy ahead, or maybe they don't even have a very clear philosophy on the Middle East. So he's getting the Israeli vision more often. Also, Trump grew up in a different world, in a New York that was very pro-Israel with a lot of Jewish business people, and is used to thinking of supporting Israel is good politically. You can see that in other older gentlemen from New York, like Eric Adams and so on and so forth, while the younger people really don't feel that way. So you have this combination of factors. AIPAC doesn't have too much influence on presidents. They're a congressional lobby group, and they're also losing a lot of their influence. It really looks to me like Trump is maybe the last sort of president who grew up in that very pro-Israel atmosphere, and it sticks with him. Then he also has a Jewish family. You can't forget. You have Jared Kushner, and you have his daughter who converted to Orthodox Judaism, and you have all this stuff. So there's a lot of day-to-day pressure on Trump, and he changes his mind according to who he talked to last. More often, he talked last to someone who supports Israel.
So is it right then when people say Donald Trump is, or at least America is the only country that can put a stop to this, and right now that America is Donald Trump's America, Donald Trump is the only one that can put a stop to this. So when Donald Trump says, I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank, do we believe him? Do we not believe him? Do we think it's what he heard in the morning? Therefore, we're now in the next 24 hours later. Perhaps it doesn't mean that anymore. How do we understand? How do we even, I don't even know what to put. I'm trying to be polite, by the way, Shaiel.
Yes, you're being very polite, much more polite than any of these people deserve, in my opinion. But regarding the annexation, I think, like you said, he's mercurial and we don't know. But I think it's a pretty good bet that regarding annexation, Netanyahu will be stopped. And the main reason for that is because he's not that invested in actual physical annexation. Because Israel is getting the benefits of annexing the West Bank every day, assuming you consider those benefits. I don't, but they do, without paying the price of official annexation, right? There's creeping annexation. Creeping annexation doesn't even cut it anymore. Basically, there's already official annexation of the West Bank by Israel. Israel's done it all, except for announce it. So they're enjoying the benefits of control, but they're not getting all the backlash that comes with it internationally. I think that's pretty comfortable for Netanyahu. The reason he's pursuing annexation is because Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, his coalition partners, want him to, and he's hesitantly doing it. If he can say to them, listen, I can't do it, the price is too high, they'll probably accept it. Meanwhile, where he's not going to accept Trump telling him what to do is the ceasefire. His entire political survival depends on this continued quote-unquote war on Hamas, which is actually a war of extermination of the Palestinian people. And if he stops it, he's going to face increasingly severe domestic consequences. So it's very untenable for him to listen to Trump on this matter. So a very clear and easy deal for Netanyahu to make is to say to Trump, I'll stop annexation, but I need to continue fighting Hamas and keep saying, don't worry, I'll be done in a month, I'll be done in 2 months, lying until he gets through to the next elections. So I think that's sort of the obvious deal.
What happens if the world, which it seems is what we have right now, the world has sent, at least the vast majority of the members of United Nations, they've said, look, we want a two-state solution, number one. Number two, we all want the war to stop. And now we have President Trump's 21-step plan. Today, Benjamin Netanyahu says, no, I'm not stopping. Does he get to get away with that? Does he get to say, I'm not stopping, and he doesn't stop? Or will this coalition army go in there, a military coalition, perhaps it's peacekeeping or whatever, go in there to stop them? There's talk of the former UK PM as well. Forget his name now. Tony Blair.
Tony Blair, yeah.
Yeah.
Look, nothing can happen without Israeli approval. And Israeli approval is very difficult to achieve. So if it's up to Netanyahu, the talks won't even become serious. If he's under enough pressure, and has to be pressure from Trump, he will enter talks on all these things. But Netanyahu is a master at having talks that go nowhere, at putting in conditions in the last minute that torpedo talks, and doing everything that he can to blame the other side. And there's enough people in Trump's circle, and Trump himself are willing to blame the other side, that he gets away with it. And he will play that game relentlessly for time until he gets past the next elections. So it's very easy for him to just play the game to Trump's not satisfaction, but to prevent the wrath of Trump. As for an international coalition, look, let's be frank. The international community is very bad at preventing genocides or stopping genocides. To say that the international community doesn't have a spine is being charitable. And I don't believe that these, admirable moves from Spain and Italy and so on are going to amount to very much. I think that even if Israel were to sink a Spanish ship, which it probably won't, there's not much that Spain can do. Israel will say that it was defending its sovereignty or whatever, and I don't think other countries are going to do all that much. What will happen is sanctions will ratchet up a little bit. Israel's about to face two very painful things from its perspective socially. It's going to be kicked out of the Eurovision song competition, and and it's going to be kicked out of the UEFA Football Association.
Do you think that's actually going to happen? Because the Americans or President Trump is saying we're not going to let it. We're not going to let them.
I think it's
a fait accompli.
I think it's a fate. From what I'm hearing from Israeli sources, by the way, they don't think that they're going to be able to prevent it. Basically, what happens is if UEFA and the Eurovision allow Israel to participate, several key members are going to boycott their events. Spain, Ireland, so on and so forth. These events can't exist without those countries. Imagine UEFA World Cup qualifiers without Spain. There's no such thing. Spain is one of the best teams in the world. Imagine them without Italy. No such thing. Israel, listen, I was an Israel supporter my whole life. Israel's terrible. Israel hasn't qualified for the World Cup since 1970. No one cares. Eurovision Israel is quite important, but not as important as several Western European nations. And that's why it's not going to matter. And what's Trump going to do? He's going to boycott the Eurovision? You know, he has a little bit more say in UEFA, but not much. I don't see it. Remember, he also tried to stop the ICC warrants. He did not. He's also going to try to stop the ICJ from ruling that what Israel is doing in Gaza is a genocide, probably unsuccessfully. There's a limit to what Trump's bullying can do, and that's a very painful moment for Israel. But the actual sanctions that Israel needs to face in order for it to stop, which are trade sanctions, full trade sanctions from the EU, those are not forthcoming. Those are not going to happen for a long time, and Israel's just going to continue to do what it's doing. Netanyahu has long ago stopped caring about Israel's image in the world and is banking on just getting by month and staying in power.
Incredible. So let's talk about you. Of course, you're an academic. We know you're an academic, but recently you had a turning point. I saw your interview or your conversation with the very direct and very left Owen Jones of the UK. Yes, you're laughing already, Shaiel. And yeah, so how did that turn around? I mean, what you said is, you've said right now, even on this during this interview, that Israel is pretty much committing genocide. How did you get to that point? Because I think it's a moral journey that a lot of people has had to go on, and accepting and coming out to admit such a thing, especially as a Jewish person, as an Israeli Jew, as an American Israeli Jew, all of that matters. How? Tell us.
Well, I think that my being Israeli and having served in the IDF and so on.
And I want to ask you about that later. Yes, that's my next question, IDF.
Yeah. Actually played a significant role in my realization. So I've never been I've always been fairly left. I've always been fairly liberal, but I was some would say fanatical supporter of the state of Israel my whole life. My family was very Zionist. My mother left the United States to come live in Israel because she believed in Zionism so deeply, and that's why when October 7th happened, I, rallied to the cause. I worked with the government on several projects. I did pro-Israeli information on social media and so on and so forth, believing that Israel had a right to defend itself after the atrocities of October 7th. I spent a lot of time fostering and cultivating sources I had in the IDF and in the Israeli government during that time, to bring up to the minute news to my followers and so on and so forth. And when the scandal broke about Israeli torture in the camps in Sde Teiman, I talked to a lot of my sources about what was going on there. They denied it. Later on, I found incontrovertible proof that not only was Israel torturing detainees, but Israel was also murdering detainees and other atrocities. I won't even.
Well, there were some of them were raped, and yes, you can say it because it's those of us who follow the news. That's the notorious prison in Israel. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, torture camp, sexual violations, murders, everything you can imagine happened there, and it's still happening there. It hasn't been closed. And eventually, my sources told me, "Listen, we were lying to you. We're lying to everyone. We're sorry. This is war. What are you going to do? People lie in war." That already made me start to question some things, to put it mildly. Then a few months later, I was talking to an individual who's in charge of targeting in the IDF, in Israeli intelligence, part of the squad that's responsible for targeting, I should say. And they were telling me, matter of fact, that they're looking for fresh sources of water to destroy them. When I was in the IDF went out of its way to avoid fresh sources of water because those were considered to be non-military targets. And I started seeing that all this time I was believing Israeli accounts because I was raised to believe that the IDF tells the truth, that Israel tells the truth, and that Palestinians lie about all these things and are manipulating the entire world. Meanwhile, on case after case, on thing after thing, it was becoming clear to me that Israel was lying, Palestinians were telling the truth, and that what Israel was doing, as someone who, I have a PhD in military strategy, I served in the army, it became very clear to me that what Israel was doing couldn't even theoretically defeat Hamas, right? Israel's not taking over all the territory in Gaza. Israel's leaving a lot of the territory. They're open to Hamas, so that Hamas will continue to fire and Hamas will continue to kill Israeli soldiers, but they'll have an excuse to continue to kill Palestinian civilians. That doesn't make any sense on a military level, but it makes sense on a political justification for genocide level. And once you start understanding that that's what Israel's doing, everything Israel does starts to make sense. The destruction of all the houses, the destruction of hospitals, destruction of water supplies, starvation of people to death. By the time Israel was starving people to death, I was already convinced it was a genocide. But that made it even clearer. You see children starving to death. You see people being shot to death while trying to gather aid. The only way not to believe that this is a genocide is if you believe, like I did, if you're raised to believe that Palestinians lie about everything and Israelis tell the truth about everything. And I just saw the facts in front of me, and part of it's thanks to my Israeli sources, that is simply not the case. Israel is going out of its way to kill Palestinian civilians and trying to empty Gaza of all of its inhabitants in order to control Gaza and build settlements there, and so on and so forth.
Thank you for that. And I've got to ask then, how do you reconcile that with being clearly a proud Jewish man, Jewish Israeli man, proud of your heritage, but also supporting Zionism, which, I'll be honest with you, a lot of us would say Zionism is the problem, not Judaism. So how do you reconcile all of that?
I honestly don't consider myself a Zionist anymore.
Okay.
I am and I'm not. I mean, if you look in the dictionary, the definition of Zionism is that you believe that Jews deserve to have a home in the land of Israel. And I have no problem with that as long as the rights of Palestinians are respected, as long as Palestinians can have a state, as long as Palestinians can have equal rights. But Zionism in practice is something completely different. We're used to thinking about communism. There's what Karl Marx wrote in a book, and there's what actually happened in the USSR, right? One was a kind of utopia, and one was a nightmare. And Zionism is not that different. So you have the definition. It seems very fair. It seems very, very reasonable when you read it in a book. But in reality, Zionism is a movement that has done nothing but repress the Palestinians, take their land, and is built on a original sin of the Nakba, of taking land away and the homes away from Palestinians. And the logical conclusion of that is genocide. And that's something that I did not realize, or I was repressing until recently. You start understanding that the fact that genocide occurred now isn't because of circumstances necessarily. It's a natural progression of the ideology. If October 7th hadn't happened, it probably wouldn't be happening now at this level. But it would be happening at a lower level. It would be happening at a pretty high level from this government, and not quite at this level. It eventually has to happen. And why? Because the ideology has turned into a numbers game, a demographics game. You have to keep Jews as the majority between the river and the sea. And since you can't do that organically, since the Palestinian population reproduces at a higher rate, and the Jewish population at less of a high rate, you have to do it artificially. That involves either ethnic cleansing or genocide, or a combination of the two. Or at best, apartheid and not allowing people to vote, which is untenable. That tends to lead to genocide and ethnic cleansing. And a lot of this is because, Zionism leads to opposition to it. When you treat people like this, they will fight back. And then that leads to more extremism and violence. It's basically an inevitable result of the fact that you have an ideology that's built on enforcing a demographic majority. And so that's why I don't consider myself a Zionist anymore, because I don't believe in enforcing a demographic majority. I believe that Jews should be able to live in Israel, and I believe that Palestinians should be able to live in Israel, and I believe that Jews should be able to return to their homes just like they always have, and so should Palestinians, and that it should be a free and open society.
So you're a one-state solution person.
That's right. Or, federation within one state, whatever, as long as no one is oppressing anyone else. That's my concern. And I feel like you can't be part of this Zionist movement without wanting to oppress Palestinians. There's a reason that I was treated as an outcast for a long time when I wanted Palestinians to have a state in the movement. And there's a reason why even supposedly liberal Zionists are up in arms at the idea of the world recognizing a Palestinian state. The two-state solution isn't at all the goal of Zionism anymore. There's 100% almost consensus and agreement on enforcing occupation on the Palestinians. And that's not a coincidence. That's the end result of being willing to enforce a demographic majority at all costs.
Incredible. I'm telling you, a lot of my listeners are like, oh, I can almost hear them. And the lines will start ringing, but I'm not going to open the lines yet. Let's talk about it, because it's interesting that you mentioned Zionism, and in Nigeria, indeed, across a lot of countries in Africa, DRC, South Africa, you name it, there are a lot of Christian Zionists in Nigeria too. And what you often hear is, we have to support Israel because God told us so in the Bible. And therefore, they must support Zionism because Zionism is Israel. What you've done right now, Shaiel, unintentionally, is to say to them, no, silly, that's not it. You're laughing. That's literally what you've done. You've shattered all their beliefs, and, they're all probably trying to sharply break their cars right now. As a young man that went into the IDF, how do you think that shapes? Because, like I said, I had Aaron Bergman just earlier on, just before you, and he talked about something. He talked about how occupation damages the occupier and the occupied. Then now I'm thinking, okay, the IDF, every single Israeli has to go into the IDF, is part of your national responsibility. And that's how Israel co-opts young minds into supporting. How do you negotiate with that? How do you become free of that? And when you served in the IDF, what were the things that you saw that you found most disturbing?
Well, at that time, Israel was also, as it often is, at war or in conflict. This was the second Intifada time. And at that point, I was 100% convinced in the justification of everything that Israel was doing. And it didn't take a lot of convincing on my part. First of all, I grew up in a very Zionist home. But second of all, I grew up in the 90s. I'm not as young as I look. And at that time, there was a peace process, and we were all very optimistic. My mother wasn't particularly, but I was, and a lot of other people were. And then Hamas, same old Hamas, started blowing up buses in my neighborhood. So I grew up in the German colony, And the buses from the German colony that went to downtown, the 14 bus, the 18 bus, were blown up by Hamas on several occasions. I knew more than one person who was on those buses, and I rode those buses sometimes on the same day, not on the same bus. Later on, when I was in the army, bless you. While I was in the army, I saw a horrific bombing in downtown Jerusalem where several people were killed. I was fine, but I saw people get killed. When I went to university after the army, same thing. My university cafeteria was blown up. All that by Hamas. So I viewed Hamas my whole life as the enemy. And when Israel was reacting against them, from my perspective, reacting in the Second Intifada, I thought it was the duty of Israel to defend itself against these terror attacks. At the time, also, Israel took many more precautions than it does now to protect the lives of Palestinians. I now realize a lot of those measures at the time were window dressing and weren't really doing much to save the lives of Palestinians. But I didn't see it there that way at the time. What I saw, and most of my colleagues believe this as well, was that we were fighting a justified war of self-defense against Palestinian terrorism and taking measures, sometimes too many measures. I think that generally most people thought that. That's one of the reasons there's less measures now. Too many measures to protect them, sometimes at the expense of our soldiers. Now, I was in intelligence, so I didn't pull any triggers directly, but I did, of course, see that targets were not always chosen discriminately, that there was very little regret when quote-unquote collateral damage ensued, and so on and so forth. I would say that at the time when I was in the IDF, the Army followed international law more or less on the most permissive side, sort of causing as much damage to Palestinian civilians as you can while still claiming to respect international law. And even though my job at the time was related to keeping international law, international law wasn't explained to me anywhere near as well as it should have been, and anywhere near as detailed a manner as it should have been. Long story short, when civilians were killed, I don't think the measures taken by the IDF were anywhere near what they should have been. But at the time, I was convinced that Palestinians didn't even deserve it. They were so busy trying to kill us, and we were doing them a favor by taking any precautions in order to spare their lives. And unfortunately, that was the dominant stream in the army at the time. And we're seeing the results now.
Yes, indeed. And I've listened to the likes of Breaking the Silence. A lot of them seems to speak. They say the same thing or similar things to what you've said, and how, this kind of freeing, cathartic moment that happens, and and suddenly they're being themselves again, right? Because it's like, I wasn't that person, but I didn't know I wasn't that person, because that's what the person I was supposed to be. Now I know who I am, and I'm not going to take that. Let's talk going forward. You said you believe in, I'm laughing because you're one of the few, like Miko Peled, there's a few others like you who believe in a one-state solution. Shaiel, the two states is impossible. You want a one state? How are you going to design that?
Well, unfortunately, that leads us to a solution that's forced on Israel.
Who's going to do that?
It will have to be the internal collapse of Israel.
Okay.
We're seeing signs of that happening. I would say that the collapse of Israel is almost an inevitability, but it's a long-term inevitability. I don't think that what's happening now with the Eurovision or whatever is going to end Israel. The process by which Israel is going to end is pretty simple. Israel is in terms of its population, is vastly outnumbered by its enemies. The Israeli policy is creating more and more enemies by the day, especially in the last year or two. After decades of progress since the 90s in terms of being accepted in the Middle East, Israel's destroying all that now. And that will only continue. Why? We have a demographic change in Israel that will keep the right wing, the extreme right wing, in power in perpetuity. Even if Netanyahu loses the next election, he's going to lose to the right. And the government...
Naftali Bennett, is that right? Yes.
That's right. And after Naftali Bennett, there'll probably be someone more extreme. And the reason is there's more and more ultra-Orthodox people being born every year, more and more settlers being born every year. The media landscape is more right-wing, so a lot of people in the kind of squishy center are becoming more right-wing. Liberal Israelis, like myself, tend to leave and also tend to have fewer children. So demographically speaking, the country will become more and more right-wing, which will create more enemies. That's number one. The quote-unquote elites of the country that create the technological advantage that allows Israel to defeat all its enemies are leaving the country. PhDs, doctors, scientists, so on and so forth, leaving the country because they feel the country is becoming less democratic and they're less safe because of terror attacks and so on and so forth. And then there's also, because of Israel's increasingly aggressive policy, due to its increased right-wing orientation, more and more Western countries will turn against it, and then sanctions will be enacted, which will then make more people from the elites leave, which will continue this cycle. What will eventually happen is you'll have a theocratic Israel that will no longer have a significant technological advantage over its enemies. In fact, considering current trends with Qatar, the UAE, and so on and so forth, that will probably end up being enemies of Israel due to its policy, they will have the technological advantage in the long term. Without a demographic advantage, they'll be unable to maintain the technological advantage. Meanwhile, also losing the demographic advantage to a greater extent between the Jordan and the Mediterranean. I don't know how long this process takes. It could take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I don't see any way to reverse it. Sort of liberal Israelis, like myself, already accept that this is going to happen. We were talking about fighting for our country a year or two ago, and now everyone agrees there's nothing to fight for.
Incredible.
So Israel will be at a point eventually. Oh, and another thing, every round of conflict with the Palestinians gets more bloody, right? You had the first intifada was almost nonviolent. Second intifada was horrific. This current third intifada, which is what this is the worst of all by a mile. The next one will be worse. And eventually Israel is not going to be able to defeat it. And so a solution will unfortunately be forced onto Israel. If Israel were to negotiate, it would get much better terms. But what's going to end up happening is Israel will be forced by the barrel of a gun to accept something that they do not want to accept.
Okay.
It's kind of like what happened to the Afrikaners in South Africa, or to the Rhodesians, or to the Algerian Pied Noirs, or so on and so forth. And that's when there will be a one-state solution on terms that no one, including myself, wants. But I believe that's what's going to happen.
So, in short, it's going to take, we're looking at least one or two more generations before we get to this peaceful land that everybody keeps talking about, or a peaceful coexistence.
I don't think it's going to be a peaceful coexistence. The trouble is when you have a group that's oppressed for as long as the Palestinians have been oppressed, and they finally break their chains, it doesn't end up necessarily in peaceful coexistence. It can end up in ethnic cleansing and murder. Just think about what happened to the German citizens who lived in Eastern Europe after World War II. They were involved in genocide against the local population, and they were thrown out, and in some cases slaughtered and so on. I don't think there will, unfortunately, the scenario I'm painting isn't one of coexistence it will at least start with a lot of violence. What happened in South Africa is the exception, not the rule.
Right. So what you're saying is the Palestinians will become the majority and the Israelis will become the minority. And of course, then, then whoever has the power then wants to basically do to them what was due to the minority, what was done to them. That's interesting.
Unfortunately,
time is going too fast. They're already calling, hold on, people. Honestly, Shaiel, the time is going too fast, and we haven't. I'd like you to give us. There's a question that I had that I wrote down, which was Oslo. Everything we're hearing now. How close or how far apart are they to Oslo? And people do talk about Oslo. They refer to Oslo. There was an argument yesterday as to whether Israelis supported Oslo, where, Yitzhak Rabin was killed. I'm going to give you a minute to kind of answer that. They've already started calling.
So, Oslo was definitely supported by the majority of Israelis, at least at its peak. Over time, due to the terror attacks that I mentioned, Oslo lost support. By the end of Oslo, by the time Netanyahu is elected, it wasn't as popular. And by the late 90s, there wasn't much support at all. But having said that, it's important that even though we thought of Oslo at the time in Israel as a great peace process, as very brave, that's not exactly what Oslo was. Oslo did not have a direct path to an independent Palestinian state. It had a path to a temporary entity.
Yep.
Rabin made sure not to say that there would be a full Palestinian state, although he believed that it would eventually lead to that. And most importantly, in retrospect, Oslo allowed Israel to continue to build settlements. And Israel used that opportunity to build more settlements than it had ever built before, something that stunned the Palestinians on the other side. And when Edward Said said that this was used as a way to launder the occupation and give it longevity, is exactly what happened. The Palestinian Authority became Israel's contractors of occupation. They've been handling the day-to-day process of occupation for Israel. They're a gift to Israel. Israel's destroying it now because it's gone fanatical. The truth is, Oslo turned into an Israeli vehicle to further the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. So one of the reasons most Israelis supported it is because it wasn't really meant to liberate the Palestinians.
The Palestinians, right. I have a comment here. Says, tell him the Muslims have never been victims. They see the Jews as their cousins. Okay. I have another. Where is it now? We have a question. A question on WhatsApp. I'm coming to your calls. People, hang on in there. Right. Good evening, Sergey, and your wonderful guest. My name is Mauton from Ikoyi. Yes, you're going to need a pen, Shaiel, because it's all going to be coming in sharp and fast. I have a question for your guest. Suicide rate amongst the IDF soldiers is increasing on a daily basis. What is Israel doing to mitigate the effects of the horror in Gaza on its citizens and on Palestinians? Right, write that down. They're calling. Let me answer this. Make it short, sharp, and succinct. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. This is Don Dugu from Savoyava. When I was younger, I normally hear this PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. What happened to this organization?
Okay, thank you. I'll ask him. Thank you very much. Right, Shaiel, that's what happened to the PLO. Let me answer this. Hello. Okay, you snooze, you lose. We don't have the time. Right, what? So I think I've been able to give you two there. The third one is coming in now. Hello.
Hello?
Turn off the radio, please. Now. Hello, 30 seconds. Hello?
Hello?
Go ahead, turn off your radio, please, and ask your question. 30 seconds. Okay, sorry, I don't have the time. Sorry, call back. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, your question, please.
Yeah, good evening. And this is
Very quickly, come to your phone and ask your question, please.
My question is, since October 7, I've been hearing genocide that Israel are committing. So what of the one that is happening in my own country, that the Fulani herdsmen...
Well, Shaiel is not from your country. Is Israeli Jew. Sorry, Shaiel, that's Nigeria. He wanted you to comment on what's going on in Nigeria North. Right, so there was a question about the PLO. I know. I can see you laughing. I told you, my listeners are amazing. Right. There was a question about the PLO and the other. I don't know whether you got the other two questions. All the lines are going crazy now.
I didn't get the third question. I got the I got the suicide one and I got the PLO one.
Okay, just answer those two. I'll come back to you. You've got 30 seconds because all the line are going crazy.
Okay, so regarding suicide, Israel's doing very little.
Mm-hmm.
Soldiers are coming to their commanders and saying, "I'm in deep distress. Please don't send me to Gaza." And again, they're getting sent into Gaza again. Like Aaron Bregman said, this is also destroying Israeli souls. And Israel's not taking precautions with their soldiers and not taking precautions with Palestinian civilians. And the suicide rates in the IDF are incredibly high, and they're covering up some of the cases as well. There used to be some significant care for you if you were suffering from a mental breakdown in the IDF. And because there are personnel shortages in the IDF, people are being sent in. They know it increases the risks of suicide, and they're doing it anyway. And I talked to psychologists in the IDF who have told me that they're doing that, and they're outraged.
Okay.
The PLO is now the legitimate and internationally recognized government of Palestine. So when you see a UN delegation for the Palestinian UN delegation, state of Palestine, and so on and so forth, that's the PLO government. They were recognized as the legitimate representatives of the Palestinian people by the UN in the 1970s, US in the 1980s. They're the ones Israel did Oslo with. So when you hear Palestinian Authority, you're hearing the PLO. The main faction of the PLO is Fatah, and that's Mahmoud Abbas and those people. There are all these other organizations under that umbrella, and they're all part of the PA government.
Thank you very much.
Talk about bringing Hamas into the PLO too, in order to create a unity government, but that hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened because Mahmoud Abbas wouldn't let it. Yes, indeed. Hello. 30 seconds, please, very quickly. I don't have time.
Marco from Paystack.
Go ahead.
I just want to ask if it seems I read somewhere that the Hamas are actually keeping Netanyahu in office and out of prison. If they disband, will it make will it weaken Netanyahu out of office? Will it help the peaceful process? Thank you.
Okay, great question. Right, he said, if Hamas disbands, will it speed up the peace process? Gosh, you're all calling. I can only take a few. We don't have time. Hello, 30 seconds, quickly.
Hello?
Quickly, yes, go ahead.
Yes. My question is, now, Israel...
No, question. Don't need to just ask the question.
They're pushing for demographic majority over Palestine. Say in the House of Assembly, they want to be majority. And your guest is saying that one-state solution is possible. These two-state...
I need a question. I'm going to have to cut you off. All the lines are ringing.
Yes. Is it going to be possible? How is it going to... this one-state solution of your guest...
Okay. Is the one-state solution possible? Okay. Right. You can write that down, Shaiel. Hello.
Yeah, Cecile, once again, evening.
Go ahead, quickly. 30 seconds.
I want to talk about those ships heading to Gaza. What is the opinion of your guests? Countries are beginning to donate.
Okay, right. The global flotilla.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Right, Shaiel, the global flotilla. We need your comment on that. And this is the last one, so you can answer. Hello.
I'm asking why Hamas are still holding those
hostages. Good question. Right. So, Shaiel, you have several. The last question is, why is Hamas still holding the hostages? So, I think I can give him 2 minutes to answer all those. Yes. Did you guess all of them?
All right, let's go.
Let's go.
Okay, well, we'll start with Hamas. Hamas is holding on to the hostages because it wants Israel to withdraw from Gaza and end the genocide. And it's not going to give them up, so far at least, unless it gets guarantees of that. And then it will be able to have a political victory as well if it does that. Now, I was asked what happens if Hamas disbands. Will it be good for the peace process? Most likely, if Hamas disbands right now, Netanyahu will complete ethnic cleansing and genocide of Gaza. I don't think, but he won't have an excuse, so it'll be a little bit harder for him to do. He'll find the next enemy. Israel's already talking about fighting in Syria against Turkey. now that Iran's not that strong. Yeah, Israel is very good at finding new enemies. It can bomb Yemen. It can do all kinds of things. So peace seems very unlikely in any case. Is a one-state solution possible? Like I said, I think that if Israel negotiated it now and had, guarantees and a veto and a federation and international guarantees and so on and so forth, it maybe could work better than the nightmare that's happening now. But Israel's never going to agree to that, unfortunately. So like I said, it's probably going to happen at the barrel of a gun. As far as the Gaza flotilla is concerned, Israel is incredibly worried about this because it doesn't really have an answer for what happens if a large naval flotilla of countries that are semi-friendly comes to its shores and tries to break the blockade. It might actually be forced to break the blockade. But I think that what's happening right now is a little too half-hearted and weak to do that. Israel can jam things electronically, stop things, threaten, stop it without going to full-out war, and probably will manage to. But if the international community really rose to the occasion and built a flotilla that would open the blockade, Israel would have no answer to that. And I think that's something the international community should definitely work on.
Excellent. Well done. I'm going to sneak in one last one. Hello.
Hello, Sisi Oge.
Very quickly, Mrs. Oboli, very quickly.
All right. Sisi Oge, I hear your guest loud and clear, as all of us. But I just want to ask, what he's saying now, he, as a Jewish top person, if I could live in his head rent-free for once, just for 1 minute.
Quickly. No, you have 10 seconds left.
I get you, ma'am. What significant happenstance did he witness that changed his line of thought generally?
Thank you. Well, I think you've answered it, but Mrs. Oboli wants to know what, as a Jewish person, what was the significant event that changed you generally? But somebody's calling from the UK. We can't answer because there's just no time.
Well, I mean, ultimately, when you realize that your country is committing a genocide and you realize that it's not just because of the leader or political party, which I could, somehow move on from, but actually because the entire movement and the way the nation is shaped, you realize that you can't be part of this movement without supporting genocide. Okay. And for me, that was an earth-shaking moment. And a lot of other Israelis are undergoing exactly what I'm undergoing, not enough. But most people aren't doing it as publicly as I am. But that's the reaction a lot of people have to what Israel is doing.
Right, they're chasing me off.
My friends have gone through the same thing.
They're chasing me off the air. Shaiel, Ben-Ephraim, you've got to come back. Thank you so much.
Anytime. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Great interviewer, and your audience is very well informed and ask fantastic questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a fabulous weekend. Bye-bye.
Essential vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. One Supermalt multivitamin after breakfast every day keeps you going.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.